New years are often filled with a ton of new goals, so many projects to begin, so many areas of this car to improve. And since we haven't done anything yet, we could really start anywhere. And the worst thing I could think of is starting off on the wrong foot. So I think it's a good time to take a step back, to take some time to remind myself of the reasons I'm building this car to begin with. I want this car to be as much fun as physically possible on back roads. A backroad sleeper, if you will. So in other words, if I'm looking for inspiration on where to start, the best place I can think to find it is yet another back road. A couple miles of fun later, I'm realizing two things. The car's an absolute blast, but it could definitely be better. Before I do any mod that would change the car fundamentally, I think it's best we improve what's already here. Big things are coming for the car, but I want to make sure the foundation's strong first. And even after such a short drive, I can already see some issues, none of which are critical to enjoying the car. It's still a blast. These are just things that I think need to be improved to make it a better car. Sure, the catback sounds great when you're high in the RPMs, but what doesn't sound great is the mysterious rattle coming from in front of the catback. And while on the subject of high RPMs, the car could definitely use more power. That's a bigger project though. The car could also use a much faster steering rack. The stock one isn't exactly backroad ready. The surprising thing I'm noticing though is how the front end feels. It's almost like there's a delay in rotation, like the front can't keep up with the rear. And this is actually something I started noticing a couple days earlier. My goal here was simple. Take the same 90-degree corner from the same speed and really try to narrow down the problem. Before we go swapping anything, I've got to make sure this isn't a placebo. The back road in combination with my couple tests really did convince me that something was off. For context, we have a rear sway bar on the car already, but the front is entirely OEM. And given the fact that when we did the rear sway bar, those bushings were almost non-existent, something tells me the front is quite similar. And bad end links or end link bushings up front could absolutely explain why it feels like there's a delay in front rotation. And with just a quick glance underneath, I was able to confirm my suspicion. I think a big cause of this car's symptoms has to be due to the old front sway bar system. So that's probably the perfect place to start. All that's left is to go home and order the right parts. Or so I was telling myself. You see, it wasn't too long before the car gave me yet another suggestion on what to do next, and it was pretty persuasive. Am I going crazy, or is this the same mileage as it was before we left? No, it's definitely the mileage we had before we left. Great, a broken odometer to add to the list. It's funny how stuff like this crops up as soon as you have an idea where to take the car. Oh well, part of the fun, I guess. While a lousy front suspension is annoying because it's well within our power to improve, a broken odometer on a car like this is an issue that takes a much higher priority. After all, without it, we have no idea to tell how long the car's been driven between service intervals. And while I could probably guess those pretty closely, I'd rather not have this broken in the interior. After all, I'm staring at it all the time. So with that, I made up my mind and figured out where to really start this year. On a cold day, I received a tiny envelope. And inside said envelope, well, there were even tinier gears. My solution to the broken odometer, or so I hoped. The only way I'd know for certain is by pulling the cluster and swapping these in. And at this point, I was thinking it would be similar to pulling the cluster from the B5, but I was quickly reminded that this is a different car. And in this case, there were way more screws in the way. After pulling out all the screws, I was finally ready to disconnect the electrical harnesses and pull the cluster itself. And even though this wasn't nearly as simple as the 2 screws holding in the cluster of the S4, it was straightforward, just quite a bit more time consuming. And with the cluster free, I could start to see what I was working with. The front came as absolutely no surprise to me. After all, it's what I look at every time I drive the car. And the rear really wasn't much of a shocker either. Really, it's just a plastic cover with a bunch of electrical connections that hides what we really care about, the internals. There we go. With the cover removed, things get a lot more interesting. Specifically, we can start to see the boards and mechanisms that control the various dials and lights on the dash, and it's pretty cool engineering to look at. Right now, we don't care about most of it though. All we care about is the odometer mechanism that sits behind this gauge. And to get to it, I've got to go even deeper. With the removal of a couple screws in this whole bracket, this gauge can slide out the front. Looking close, I saw the gears that control the odometer. Looking even closer, I saw something that made me happy. The gears on my odometer were broken. Specifically, both the drive gear and the first gear in the assembly were missing teeth. And like this, it's probably not going to count miles too well. So what I did next was remove the gears one by one. After all, I've got replacements for most of them. And most of them really just slide off. There's no glue or anything holding them in place. The only exception is this small drive gear here, which had a brass bushing beneath it which I needed to deform enough to pull off. With that, all the gears were finally free, so I set them all by their new counterparts so that I could see what went where. Installation of these new gears is actually quite simple. Each gear has a different number of teeth on each side, and it's done like this so that it can change how fast the odometer spins and make it accurate. But that also makes it really easy to reinstall the gears and know where they go. After all, each set of teeth will only really line up with one other set of teeth in the entire system. So there's really only one way this can all go back together. The easiest way to test this is to just spin one of the gears. If they all spin because one is spinning, it's done correctly. And if one of them doesn't, well, at least it's easy to start over at this stage. With the gears tested and working, it was time for reassembly, and it was exactly what I did to disassemble it, except in reverse. And in hindsight, if I really wanted to just test the odometer, what I could have done was simply plug it in electrically and go for a drive. But since I already tested the new gears and spun them manually, I figured I would also reinstall the trim now as well. I was pretty confident this would do the trick. A couple days later, I brought the car back, but this time for voluntary improvement, not because something was broken. In the meantime, I had done a bit of thinking. From my estimation, the main issue was the old bushings on my front sway bar end links. And while I could have just fixed those and made an improvement, I didn't want to stop there. I figure while we're doing this, we might as well go the whole 9 yards. So along with the end links, I'd like to replace and upgrade the front sway bar, including some brackets to reinforce the mounts. Just like the rear of the car, I bought a kit from ST. I really liked how the rear fit and the reinforcements it came with, so that's exactly what I want for the front. Plus, they're designed to work together, so I know the ratio between them is going to be perfect. And as far as end links goes, these are OE style. Nothing adjustable, nothing crazy, just bushings that aren't 30 years old, which is going to make a way bigger difference than you'd think. Front sway bar installation difficulty is very hit or miss. It really depends on the car, unlike the rear, which is usually always pretty easy. In the case of the S4, the sway bar is right on the bottom and it takes maybe 20 minutes to remove. The TT's front sway bar, on the other hand, sits on top of the subframe, so to remove it you need to droop the subframe and remove a whole host of other parts. In other words, difficulty varies, and so does the approach needed. The S4 sway bar can be done on ramps, the TT's can't, and that really hinges on if you're removing control arms or subframes. And in the case of the E30, this car's on jack stands. But it's not nearly as bad as the TT. We really only have to disconnect one control arm in one spot to get the front bar out. And other than that, it's just heat shields in the way and the typical process for removing a sway bar, starting with the bottom of the end links and then the chassis mounts. And speaking of the chassis mounts, just like the rear, this is what we're going to be reinforcing. Stock, these are held in place with one bolt and a tab that hooks into the subframe, and these mounts commonly snap with age because they're really not held in with that much force. Really, it's just the little lip that hooks in on the left that's doing the majority of the lifting. In other words, that's why we need to reinforce it. And to pull the sway bar itself, we need to disconnect the control arm, hence the jack stands. Definitely don't want to do that with the car on its own weight. The easiest place to do this is just simply the two bolts that hold the end of the lollipop in place. And this only has to be done on one side so you can rotate it enough. And with them out of the way, the whole control arm will slide down and the sway bar can come right out. Setting the old sway bar by the new, we can see what we're working with. I didn't need this car to be super stiff in the front, which is why the upgraded sway bar is only a couple millimeters bigger, but this increase will be more than enough to help turn in and body roll. The biggest difference though is going to come from the new end links. The bushings on the old ones are well past their glory days, and nothing looks better than fresh parts connected to fresh parts. And I'm glad to start chipping away at this car's suspension in order to make it really shine. I'd like it to be as clean as the S4 setup someday. Installing the new sway bar and end links is just as easy as removing the old one, but the big thing to remember is to not reconnect the control arm until the sway bar is in its position. Otherwise, you're not going to be able to get it in there. But once that's back up there, the control arm can go back on too. The end links have the same connection as they did, but the connection to the chassis with the bushing is completely different. Firstly, we'll need a new bushing because it's a bigger bar, but with that added stiffness, we need to reinforce the whole system, and this kit has a reinforcement bracket just for that. The original design had one bolt into the subframe and a tab on the other side. The new design includes a spacer plate to spread the force and replaces the tab with another bolt into the subframe. Effectively, one side is the OEM subframe bolt and the other is the OEM sway bar bolt. The bracket around the bushing is a lot thicker. Plus, it comes with all the spacers needed to allow it to sit flush and not bend when tightened. Replacing the end with a tab with the bolt that goes through the subframe into the car is a lot stronger. Super cool design in my opinion, and it'll go a long way towards making the car feel better. The only issue with installing the new sway bar is that this shield no longer fits quite as flush. I was still able to get the bolts in, but it sits down a little lower than normal. Really not the end of the world at all. With the sway bar back on and everything torqued down at ride height, I only had one question left. Did this really fix the issue? The next day, I went through the same test as before, but this time with the new sway bar. And unlike last time, the results were quite different. Even though the steering rack hasn't changed, turn-in felt more direct, my inputs felt less muted, and overall the car felt way more solid. Like I could actually begin to trust how it would respond in a corner, and it didn't feel like the front was body rolling a lot more than the rear. Plus, the cherry on top was that the odometer was now working again. Looks like replacing those gears did the trick. This year, this car has a pretty big journey ahead of it, and performance-wise, the hope is that it'll be completely different than it is now. Every step of that journey is going to be important though, so we can't ignore the small things, and for that matter, I don't want to. After all, they're half the fun, and at the end of the year, those are what's going to make this car feel better than ever. All I can really say is I'm excited for this car's future. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed, consider dropping a like and subscribing for more. That's the best way you can help support me and my content. Either way, I'll see you guys in the next episode. Thank you again. Have a wonderful day.